Now, politics is showbiz for ugly people, goes the saying. Charming. But only some politicians attain celebrity status. So what have they got that others haven't? Here's Eleanor Garnier.
Actors playing politicians are, of course, trained to capture the audience.
But if you want something done, ask a woman.
But there are some politicians, like the late Margaret Thatcher, who master the art of holding our attention so well, they seem to transcend politics altogether, reaching a certain celebrity status.
Gold medal!
There are mishaps and plenty of mixed metaphors.
My leadership chances, as I think I may have told you before, are about as good as my chances of being reincarnated as a baked bean.
But whatever the London mayor gets up to, there always seems to be a lot of love for Boris.
All right, would you like to see Boris back for the next election?
I love Boris.
I love him, man. He's doing a good work, man.
And there's a certain something about the fellow public schoolboy and former banker, now UKIP leader Nigel Farage, and his charismatic character. Scotland's First Minister, Alex Salmond, has certainly got the hang of it. But is there something the successful ones all share?
Politics is largely an art form, and therefore to really succeed in politics you have to be an artist, and that means being a great communicator, a great actor. Even when you're being completely fake and inauthentic, you've got to convey the sense that you are being utterly sincere and authentic.
Putting on a show and doing a bit of acting isn't easy. So what tricks do politicians have to win us over?
British eccentricity. It's got to be, hasn't it?
Maybe a bit more quirky, something a bit different to what we're used to.
Vulgarity, maybe. One explanation. Charisma is another one.
Maybe a bit more human, or less human in some cases, you know.
Another master to add to the mix, Tony Blair, here at his last Labour conference as Prime Minister, diffusing tension between his wife and Gordon Brown.
At least I don't have to worry about her running off with the bloke next door.
In a way that I think is still underestimated, Tony Blair, for a start, was a mesmerising orator. I used to get his speeches before he delivered them when he was leader of the opposition and read them and think, what total rubbish. We're going to be a young country, a country reborn. And then he would stand there on the stage and say, we're going to be a young country, country reborn. And you'd believe it. You would be utterly spellbound.
How much of this is taught and how much of it is actually just natural talent and you've either got it or you haven't?
The great artists just have it by instinct. They know how to communicate. They know how to appear sincere. They know how to be funny. And they have just got it.
And if you've got it, flaunt it. The longer politicians manage to keep the audience entertained, the longer they can stay in the limelight.
Eleanor Garnier reporting there. Well, with us now is the journalist and author Peter Hitchens. Come to you in just a moment, Peter. You're a big fan of Tony Blair. Why?
Absolutely. Well, I think not only because of his record, but also as sort of Steve Richards touched on there, that he made... I think there's a lot to be said for politicians who make people excited and who inspire, and Blair certainly did that.
Right. What was wrong with Tony Blair? I mean, he was a great communicator. A lot of people believed that. A lot of people voted for him over a period of 3 elections. That cannot be denied.
Well, I don't know whether it can be denied or not. It didn't do much for me, but what was he a communicator of? He seemed to me to be a communicator of drivel and of vacuousness, and almost everything he said qualified as either one or the other, if not both. And I never saw a speech he made where I didn't think, why are people sitting here listening to this and taking it seriously? The man, there was nothing there.
Right.
I think the magic of Blair was, and I think David Cameron's proved this, is he was and remains so vacuous that anybody who wanted to manufacture an image could pump almost anything into him and it would come out at the other end. Whereas David Cameron is considerably more intelligent, and as a result his attempt to be a second Blair hasn't really worked, because he's got enough intelligence to block the drivel valves from...
But he hasn't won an election, has he?
No, he hasn't. But on the other hand, that's to do with the fact that the Conservative Party is dead, which is not really something anybody can do anything about.
Right, not even David Cameron. I mean, listening to that, Hitchens says he was vacuous and didn't say anything, and therefore it was easy enough for everybody to project what they wanted to hear. Do you think that's true in a way, or do you think there was a narrative, a passion, that he did believe in something?
I think he absolutely did. I think if you look at his vision for the country, which was to have, well, firstly for the Labour Party to embrace the markets, and people talk about the Clause 4 moment, that was significant. And if you think about intelligence, David Cameron may well be better educated than Tony Blair and may well have got better results, but
they're both equally well educated. They're both Oxbridge public school products. So
but he doesn't have political intelligence. He doesn't have the political judgment that Blair had.
The only vision that Mr. Blair had was visions of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which weren't there. Beyond that, it was slogans, which the kind of slogans which you have just come up with. Don't actually have any meaning. Clause 4. Clause 4 was dead before you were born. Clause 4 was killed off by Harold Wilson. It didn't matter. Anybody who understood anything about British politics knew that it was symbolic. Nothing.
Well, let's talk about, I mean, it's personality, isn't it, we're talking about? Steve Richards mentioned the sort of having the instinct, having a likeability, if you like. Even Tony Blair said you've got to be a member of the human race, haven't you, before you actually get into the sort of political class.
Wouldn't it be more fun to have dislikable politicians who actually had some knowledge and experience of what was going on?
Who do you like and who do you rate?
Oh, I mean, thinking back, there was a generation which had come through the Second World War, whichever side they were on, who actually knew something. Dennis Healey is a particularly good example, who you can listen to, and you can hear there is some experience in this person and some knowledge of reality. He's seen people killed. He knows what war is like, for instance, which so many of these buffoons do not, which is why they're so anxious to start them.
Right, well, I don't want to sort of make that immediate link into Boris Johnson, but what about Boris? I mean, he's got great personality. He seems to have great appeal.
Yeah.
Is he a politician of substance?
Well, he is, and ultimately what unites politicians like Boris and like Tony Blair is that they have a certain level of personality, but that will only get you so far. Ultimately, you're judged on your record. And the reason Boris was re-elected and the reason why Blair won 3 terms as Prime Minister was because when it came down to it, people said, has my life got better or has it definitely not got worse? And Boris in London actually has been quite successful, and that's why he got re-elected.
What's your view on Boris?
I think he's quite a good performer, though I have a feeling it's a bit like Monty Python. I think in 20 years' time people will wonder what it was they were laughing at. He's an engaging person. I find him likeable, but I don't think that he is what he appears to be. I think a lot of Conservatives, for instance, who think that he's very hostile to the European Union would be quite surprised if they studied what he actually said and thought about it. He's not what he appears to be, which may be the trick as well. But then, do we want that? Regular, repeated disappointment of the electorate discredits the whole system.
Right, well, let's look at Ed Miliband. You do a rather good impression of the current Labour leader. Let's have a look.
For me, Ed Miliband, if he wants to be Prime Minister, has to answer 3 massive questions. 1, how do you deliver social justice in an era where there isn't enough public cash? 2, how does Britain compete with the emerging markets of Japan, Brazil and Argentina? And 3, what the hell is that voice all about, mate? Sounds like Tony Blair with a cold. Tony Blair would talk like that. Well, look, let's talk about it. And as the years went by and his nose got all bugged up, it's come on. I want to talk about it too. Come on, guys, look, I want to talk about what's going on. Come on. Look, these are big issues, I know. It's not a leader's voice, is it?
Does it matter about the voice?
I think it matters a bit. I think if you're... sometimes the voice can help. Oddly, William Hague was seen as very much a pipsqueak and a bit of a drip. And he would talk at the top end of his vocal range when he was Leader of the Opposition, and now he's Foreign Secretary. He talks in a far more deep, and it gives him real gravitas when he talks to the House.
Yeah, does that mean he would be more likely to be leader now with that voice than he was back then?
Arguably, yeah. I can't see Ed Miliband changing his voice anytime soon, but the problem is that if you're not doing so well and you're perceived to be a bit of a drip, and, you know, unfortunately Ed Miliband is, having a bit of a silly voice just helps you be lampooned.
Do you think he's being hampered by the look, the voice that critics say?
Well, there's no doubt that he's being hampered by all kinds of things, and he's always caricatured in a particularly unflattering way. And the question is not whether he's got a particularly different or unusual voice. The question is, should it matter?
Does it matter?
Should it? Well, it oughtn't to matter.
But it does.
It does matter. It oughtn't to. Therefore, it is surely the duty of anybody who's got any role at all in mediating between politics and the public to make sure that it doesn't matter. What matters is what he says and what he thinks, not whether it comes through his nose or whether it comes through his larynx.
But in a televisual age, Peter Hitchens, are you ever going to get away partly from the image, the look, the sound of a politician.
Perhaps not. Television infantilises all who watch it and many who appear on it, and I think there's very little
Hope you're not
doubt
talking about me,
that. I know
that
it just does that, and it's a terrible danger to freedom of thought. It makes people tremendously conformist. It means you can dismiss quite a substantial person with trivial mockery. And effectively, it's a tool by which you can destroy real politics and substitute a kind of politicised
trivialising politics, even though you were once obviously a big cheerleader for it?
Trivialise it? I think you've got. I think it's a right to mock politicians.
Well, mocking someone for his voice is not trivialising politics. Of course, it is.
Well, it's just caricature. Spitting Image did it to some extent, and it's just carrying on.
Spitting Image, I think, also did quite a lot of harm of that kind.
It doesn't
these people up. Brilliant in what way? I mean, ever since that was the week that was, political discourse in this country has basically been the sort of sense of humour of a public schoolboy of around 1958 dominating whatever we think. Nobody actually studies what these people say. Nobody actually studies what they do. Most of what they do passes unobserved, and as a result, as I say, we have an infantile political culture.
Is that really the fault, though, of, as you say, satire, if you like? I mean, to some extent, people say it engages people a bit in politics.
Yes, but if it engages them in a way which lessens their understanding of it, then that's not engagement, is it? If you want to engage them, you shouldn't engage them in increasing their understanding. One of the reasons why this country is so badly governed is because of this childish attitude we have towards our politicians. We turn against them because we're tired of them, not because the things they do are wrong.
If you compare British democracy to a lot of other countries in the world, actually we have a vibrant democracy as a result of politicians knowing that they'll be publicly scrutinised and mocked.
No doubt it's vibrant, but is it any good? We are, I think, one of the most indebted countries in the world. We make almost nothing. All our political statistics are fiddled. All our political parties are virtually identical. This seems to me to be a bigger problem than what comes out of Ed Miliband's nose.
I don't just do hours and hours about Ed Miliband's voice. You know, I do mock him for his record and all the rest of it, but that's a funny way to sort of caricature someone.
All right.
It doesn't teach anybody anything very important.
I'm not a teacher.
We're going to leave it there. Peter Hitchens, thank you very much. And thank you for being our guest of the day. In a moment, we'll get a beginning of the week briefing from two of Fleet Street's finest. They're waiting for us just outside Parliament. First time now to